Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Bergen. I'm Rex Jenkins. I manage the UK operation on behalf of Vizrt. Last week, there were two milestone moments for the UK. The first was we were awarded by the BBC of a new contract for their digital delivery and archive program. The project, which essentially is an asset management system which looks after the BBC's entire crown jewels, as they describe it. It took us 7 months to achieve. It was a very hard-fought battle, but I'm very pleased that Vizrt won the day. And congratulations to all our MAM developers and R&D for creating such a fantastic product. The second thing that happened was we had a general election. It was a magnificent affair. Every single broadcaster in the UK that covered the election, both national and regional, used Vizrt tools to do so. And of course, we were on full alert all day and all night, waiting for panicky customers to call. But we didn't receive a single support call all night. So again, congratulations to R&D for making fantastic graphics product. So it's with great pleasure I'd like to hand over to these two gentlemen from the BBC who were behind that fantastic BBC spectacle, which we provided some help to generate. And Jonathan Spencer and Mark Edwards. Some of you may remember Jonathan from last year, who has been working with Vizrt Virtual Studio tools for a number of years. Many of us thought he couldn't top what he did for the Scottish Referendum, but sure enough, he did. And so, well done, and I hand over to you guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rex. We thought it'd be nice to start with a thought about the impermanence of power, about its transitory nation, best expressed through democracy. But here's Shelley's take on it. Now, I was talking to one of our team, Mr. Jonathan Barrett, about how he started in the industry. And he started with slides. So, with these things. So, we thought it'd be fun to put together a little slideshow for you. He told me that each slide, at the peak of his experience in the AV industry, was £250 a slide, which is quite a lot, I thought, with genographics, that is. And to get a nice loop, you need to do 81 slides in the carousel. So does anybody have a calculator? Please? Anybody with a calculator? This is a bit of audience participation in this, come on. Right, so the idea is 250 times 81. Now to get smooth movement, you need at least 8, probably 16. 16 of those things. Oh dear, slide's upside down. That happened quite a lot as well. So the point being that technology was hugely impressive. They'd do huge walls with 16 projectors at great expense, and everybody was bowled over it by it. But it did take us a while to find one now. And to some extent, there's a parallel there with the poem you can see. There's an impermanence to things and ideas. And that is expressed through elections. Now, when Mark and I talk to you about our election, we may say I, we mean we. There's a number of people here who worked with us. We've got a list of people, but I'll just pick them out. There's Martin there, there's Chris. I think Pete from Idonics will be here. We've got a list of names here. So we'll read them off and go from there. Okay, that's quite enough of that. Right, we started this project really about 8 months ago with the Scottish Referendum. It was a programme that we TX live from Glasgow. We didn't use a traditional studio space. We used a stipe grip and jimmy jib, and we took extensive recce's. We did a lot of measuring, didn't we?
Yeah, we went up and did a recce beforehand. We measured the building. We got blueprints, etc. before we started.
So preparation is everything. And I'm just going to show you a quick little clip reel. There'll be no country dancing, I promise you. And for any Scots in the audience, this was put together for the American market. Okay, just so you understand.
The people of Scotland have voted in record numbers on the future of their nation.
So there's a little taste. One of the things we did that you saw in there was this window effect. We described it as the physical impossibility of death in the mind of somebody living, from Damien Hirst's famous piece, you know, with the shark. And then Mark came up with a better title.
We thought we'd go with something a bit more snappy, so we called it the Shark Tank.
Excellent. Now, there was a lot of work needed to get the stuff coming out of the screen. We have the perspective-corrected shots from the stipe, and then we bring the stuff out into the real world. And a big thanks to Danny Popkin at the BBC for syncing all of that up. And again, preparation was really the important part of this project. So, there we go. This was our explanation of the concept. And it worked surprisingly well. Same camera, both sides from opposite ends, in 3D, in the monitor, and then stuff coming out. And we shot a little test. There we go. We shot it on an iPhone, the traditional method of passing on information, of sharing ideas. There we are, stuff coming in and out of the screen with the stipe. Okay, so that worked quite well. Mark.
So yeah, so one of the challenges we had for the Scottish election was we did it in Glasgow in BBC Scotland's building, but they were using the studio, so the space we had was actually in the atrium of the building, which sort of presented unique problems. So the way we decided to approach it was to have a real LED screen and then augmented graphics coming out of that to interact together. So as Jonathan said, we went there, we did a lot of measurements around the building and did a 3D mock-up. We wanted to use kind of real-world depth in the screens, to show kind of accurate data information as it came in of what was happening with the live votes, etc. So this was the content in the screen. The way we divided it was that we were going to have kind of the big story stuff was going to be in the screen, and then more of the analysis would come out, BAR elements. So we did a kind of proportional represented chart showing, so each of these blocks is one of the different constituencies in Scotland, and some of them are obviously much bigger because the population's higher. And then it kind of shows the sort of yes-no breakdown per block. And then this is, so there's Jeremy in front of the screen. This is like an early visualization. So as you can see, like graphs and things would then come out. You could do analysis. This was another idea where this was the atrium space in the building, and we were thinking that stuff could kind of fly out of the screen and build up towards a winning line to sort of say how far through the night we were. And a big map, because everyone loves maps. And submarines as well. Everyone loves submarines. So we had this. One of the big things in Scotland is because Trident's based there, and all the Scottish Party, the SNP, want to take Trident out of Scotland. So we went high on military hardware for these graphics. We had helicopters and submarines flying in there, just because it was such a big space. We were already doing stuff in the screen, and this just gave us a vast canvas to work with. Is this a clip?
Yeah, if you...
Let Jeremy tell us the story of how it happened. Jeremy?
Here then is the final percentage after this referendum. Yes on 45%, no on 55%, a clear 10% margin for the no's, wider than anything the polls were telling us really in the fortnight running up to this dramatic day and night of voting and counting. Let me show you the map of Scotland after this result. We've coloured in areas where the no's won red. So have a look at this. So the no's in red and almost the whole of Scotland cover. You can see though the four.
So I'm just going to jump ahead there. That's
yes
shows you some of the things we were working on. Jonathan, would you like to talk about the US midterms?
Okay. Well, we followed that with the US midterms, and a very short turnaround. We had to split our teams. In 2010, we did a program based in Washington, but for this one, we did it differently. We were feeding into the Washington fed into the London hub, and we did the VR in Studio A. This was our design from 2010. Jonathan Barrett took it on and freshened it up and made it absolutely lovely. But once it had been through the various approval committees, we were back with the grey. Never mind, so it goes. Right, these were the aspirations, nice and easy, report the results. And I'll give you a little taste of it and bring us out a bit early.
We have been up till now. Democrats in the blue in control of the Senate. But Republicans are looking to gain at least 6 seats in the Senate to take over as the majority party there. They already control the lower chamber of Congress, that's the House of Representatives here, and that balance of power is not expected to change tonight. If anything, it could go even more to the red. So victory could give Republicans control of both chambers. So what would a Republican-controlled Congress mean for American politics and for this man, Barack Obama? Well, Republicans would be able to pass legislation that Democrats don't like. And the Democrats, Mr. Obama, well, he would probably use his presidential veto to stop those bills becoming law. But
Okay, so everything was data-driven. We took the results from AP, parsed them in-house. That data was sent to Vizrt. We had a few issues with shared memory, and we learned a lot more about Viz. That's one of the things I love about Viz. There's always something new to learn. With scripted solutions we developed in-house. It was the first use of a touchscreen in a VR environment. A lot of development went into the whole project. But the thing that everybody liked was, oh, Obama was in the scene. So we're not stupid. We took that on board. Okay, you've had the aperitif. You've had the first course. Now let's get on to the meat and potatoes. This is what you're all here to see, the UK general election. Now, one of the things we're asked is how many people, how long did it take? So here it is. It was a flexible, creative team. Sometimes it was down to 2, sometimes there were a maximum of 7 people working on it. And a flexible development team, and Martin can tell you much more about that. Sometimes it was down to a minimum of 2, sometimes it was up to 6. We also, at the same time, launched quite a big program for the news channel during this period, and that caused a lot of stresses. Our team was responsible for creating lower thirds, full forms, touchscreen, VR, AR, and, projections. I thought they'd gone away. But never mind, we did some. We were partnered with Idonics, Creative Technology, and some other company whose name escapes me. Vizrt. Oh, that's not very... Go on, you've got to say it louder. Come on. Let's hear you. Some other company. That's much better. Right, Mark.
So these are some of the early concepts. So the idea for the general election was our editor came to us and he liked this idea of giving him the feeling that we had lots of data at our fingertips in this kind of era of big data. So we were looking at a lot of stuff. We looked at a lot of kind of interface and HUD design things from movies like Prometheus, Oblivion, stuff like this. This is just some early mood boards that we did at the start. And then we went on there to develop kind of various things. Now, I'm the lead on the VR stuff, and this is an example of some of the graphics that we did. It's not all of them. I think there was about 8 different VR sets that we had to do, and we had them all in one scene that loaded up dynamically and things like that. So there was, at the top there, there's a sort of general set with a map in that we used for a lot of things like battlegrounds and things like that. We also did Downing Street, which we'll talk more about later. Jonathan Barrett there was a swingometer that was meant to be inside Big Ben. The clock face was the actual swingometer. And then there's some, we did sort of House of Commons as well and some interior stuff from other places in the House of Parliament. So another thing we had to do as well was, it wasn't just on the election night, we had to start doing the campaign graphics around a month beforehand. So one of the things that was really, really good in this election was, because our facility in Studio A is also Viz-based, we could use the same set of graphics to achieve those, although it didn't mean we had to finish them a bit earlier. Because everything was coming from Idonics, we had to kind of take snapshots of their data, and then we used Content Pilot to drive those, which was great. I mean, it was brilliant for us because it allowed us to test a lot of the key graphics before we actually went to air. So this is an example of one of the campaign graphics. This was actually, this wasn't from Studio A, this is from our main studio, because it was just a week before.
Jeremy Vine is here with me in the election studio with his guide to some of Thursday's key battles. Jeremy.
Hugh, thank you. Well, the electoral map of Britain is surely changing, and if the polls are to be believed, Labour may lose dozens of seats here in Scotland. So they need to make them up with gains of Conservative blue seats or the Liberal Democrat orange seats in England and Wales. How do they do that? Well, look at their battle board here, and these, first of all, are the most marginal seats that Labour are targeting, the closest from last time: Warwickshire North, Thurrock, Hendon, and so on. And they really need to go across this board like a knife through butter. 32 seats for them here. The next board is a bit less marginal, and here it gets more sticky. Ipswich, Conservative. This one, Dundee East, held by the SNP. On paper, they are very unlikely to gain, but maybe they can paint most of this board in red. It still may not be enough if there have been big gains in Scotland. So we go to board 3. Board 3 containing seats 70 and 80 and 90. But Great Yarmouth, for example...
So there was quite a lot of that, so I'll just skip ahead because we're a bit tight for time. Do you want to do the intro?
Yeah, we did think, seeing as we're here in Bergen and not all of you have our encyclopedic knowledge of the British electoral system, we better put the rest of this into context. At the start of the campaign, the polls were indicating there would very much be a hung parliament. So, well, I could explain it, but we've got, what's her name?
Philomena Kunk. I need to say that very carefully.
Who will explain it to you?
Thank you. I'm in a sort of PlayStation House of Commons, which you can see, and I can't because it's all green where I am. This election is important for politicians because if they lose, they get hung. And it's all about winning seats, which is weird because, as you can see, they're actually benches. The important bit's that white dotted finish line down there. Basically, when the votes come in, they sit in rows like a school photo until there's enough of them to go over that line. So if the Tories do brilliantly or breed and make loads of new blue flavour MPs, it might look like this. See, the benches are filling up with blue stuff like a tenner lady pad. In this case, they've got 335's worth, which means they flood over the line and they've won Britain. But what would happen if Labour did sort of okay, but not as good as that? See, that's not enough to get them over the winning line, and apparently they're not allowed to just shuffle along, sort of spacing their bums apart along the benches so they are over the line. Instead, they have to borrow MPs off other parties. So, say they nicked 25 Liberal Democrats. That's something, but not enough. So they might have to get some SNP people in like they've promised they definitely won't. And that does take them over the line, and the SNP and Lib Dem colours are so similar, they'd probably get on. The Tories and UKIP don't want that to happen, but the ones who'd be most angry are the Greens, because the benches were green to start with before all the other colours came in. So they were winning by 100%, and now they've been left with fuck all, but that's democracy. Anyway, it doesn't matter what happens in here, it's outside in Great England Kingdom where the politics actually happens.
So, let's talk a little bit about the politics of Great England Kingdom, because she makes a very good point there. We've talked about projections, we've talked a little bit about Scotland. Let's talk about the exit poll. As we said, the data was showing a hung parliament. But the exit poll showed something different. Now cast your mind back to Barack Obama.
So we better get started. First, with our exit poll, which even now I can't reveal until Big Ben strikes 10. Remember, this is an exit poll, very carefully calculated, not necessarily on the nail. But here it is, 10 o'clock. And we are saying the Conservatives are the largest party. And here are the figures which we have. Quite remarkable, this exit poll. The Conservatives on 316. That's up 9 since the last election in 2010. Ed Miliband for Labour, 77 behind him at 239, down 19 from the last election. And the other parties, the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party. Look at the Scottish National Party. 58 for Nicola Sturgeon. That's every seat but one in Scotland, taken by the SNP. Nick Clegg for the Liberal Democrats on 10. That's down 47 from the last election. UKIP, we're saying on 2. Treat that with caution, because it's a new entry, in a sense, in this game. It's difficult to work out in places where UKIP hasn't stood before what it'll be like, but that's what we're saying at the moment. 2 for UKIP. So that's the remarkable scene that our exit poll is revealing. We shall discover when the first results start coming in how accurate it is. But if that is the story, it is a quite sensational.
Right. we got all the party leaders in and filmed them against Green. We were going to ask them to do this. But we thought maybe they wouldn't. So that was the exit poll at 10 o'clock. The next clip I'm going to show you is from the news at 10 on the Friday. So this is Nick. I apologise for his voice. He'd had a cold. He'd been talking all night. He's recently had surgery as well. So he sounds a bit rough, but the points he makes are very, very good.
Sensational, David. An extraordinary night if that exit poll is right. Notice those ifs. I didn't believe it, and neither did they.
If this exit poll is right, Andrew, I will publicly eat my hat on your programme.
I won't eat my hat, but I will eat my kilt if they get...
No,
if they get 50
we're running out of hats. That's a hat and a kilt.
Right.
So there you go. That's what they thought at 10 o'clock. It wasn't accurate, but it turned out to be very accurate. In fact, we'd rather underestimated to some extent. And as the results came in, we beefed it up, and the Tory performance got better throughout the night until they had a majority. So let's talk briefly about the touchscreen. Emily, make this is touchscreen.
So this was basically a development of what we'd done in Scotland. So we had a large screen, as we did there, but the idea was to kind of augment it with touch. We had an infrared grid over the front so that she could kind of interact with it to drive stuff. And it was her job was primarily to sort of react to what the main group of people were saying and show results in a kind of reactive way. So again, we were looking at these kind of these sort of augmented interactive HUD type interfaces. This is, as our brand was kind of an isometric cube hexagon, this was a sort of proportional version showing the number of seats. And then this is kind of an in situ version. So the idea is all these blocks that you can see, they're individual constituencies, and then you can bring one forward and analyze it. It's another previs. And this is an animation test for how the bars and things can animate. We had this idea of a kind of big drop shadow that reacted to lighting as well, which we used a kind of shadow catcher thing to generate. And here's a bit of it in action on the night.
Extraordinary result, actually. Newcastle upon Tyne East has just come in. You might remember that the Lib Dems were in second place here. Let me give you the headline, first of all. Nick Brown, 49% share of the vote. You'll remember him as the chief whip under Gordon Brown. He's safely returned then on a majority of 12,500. But look where the Lib Dems are now. They've been pushed into fourth place after the Conservatives, after UKIP. And when I show you the change overnight, then it becomes clear why. They've absolutely tanked here in Newcastle, down 22%. You can see how that vote has been shared out pretty much, bit for Labour, bit for Conservatives, for UKIP and the Greens. It's not clear exactly what the churn has been here, but what you can say is that the Lib Dems have had an extraordinary bad time here, and it looks as if when you take the swing, and it's Conservative to Labour swing of a tiny bit. It doesn't really tell us the whole story, of course, because we can see that the Lib Dems were the second party last time round. But it looks as if that Lib Dem vote has not necessarily been picked up by Labour as much as they might have thought.
I think it's worth saying one of the things we fought hard with this to do was get a one-to-one ratio, pixels to LEDs. So there was no scaling involved, it just came out native, and that's one of the reasons it looked so sharp. Okay, drones and cranes. We first used this technique in Glasgow, and we did it. It came about, we saw a drone shot where somebody had post-produced the Commonwealth Games logo onto the Clyde, and we thought, well, if we could get the virtual camera data out of the shot, then we could use Vizrt to put live results onto the shot, which sounds pretty straightforward. It wasn't quite as straightforward as that, but ultimately it worked. We also were able to get access to 10 Downing Street and to the House of Commons. Now, I've got a little confession to make. When we did the 10 Downing Street shoot, we did it with a crane. And NCAM were brilliant. They came and they set up and collected the data. So we had a track and a crane. We were looking at the NCAM data capture. It looked very, very solid in the previs. It looked excellent, eminently usable. When we got the shots back to base and looked at them, it had been so windy that the shots were shaking. So we had to stabilize the shots, which meant we couldn't use the NCAM data. It's a shame because it looked as if it would have done a really, really good job for us, but the shots were unusable. It's a bit like saying, it's not you, it's me. It was us. Our shots were shaky. We had to stabilize them. So subsequently, we tracked it using PF Track and extrapolated the 3D camera position for that as an FBX and took it into Vizrt 3.7. And for the other drone shots of the House of Commons, we did the same thing with PF Track, and that worked reasonably well. But then we saw a workflow from Christian and Gerhard, thank you very much, using After Effects that worked to treat. So we used that in the end. So this was our pre-recorded backplate and live results. So there we are. To get a nice shot of the House of Commons, you need to get up very early. And there's the drone we used, and there it is in flight. Now, there's a key thing here when you look at this. The House of Commons has a big body of water in front of it. That big body of water is run by the Port of London Authority, and they really don't like people flying over it and refused its permission on several occasions. However, they did let slip that there was a maritime exclusion zone around the House of Commons, which means you can fly in it, but God help you if you drop your drone in the water, because it's then a hazard to navigation when it leaves, and you will be sued so badly. So we got a safety boat outside the maritime exclusion zone to pick it up should it have gone in, which it didn't, and we got our shots. It was Extreme Facilities who did this for us. They do a lot of work with Top Gear, and having got the stuff out of the shots of the House of Commons, we decided to put a screen on the Commons and sat down and did our usual extensive pre-visualization. So there you are. And this is what we ended up with. There's two versions.
I think I should bring you up immediately with our forecast now. It's no longer called the exit poll, even though we've only had 6 declarations in. And here it is, superimposed on the House of Commons. Conservatives on 316, just approaching that 326, which they don't hit. The 326, which would give them control of the House of Commons, could even be 323 if we discount.
Okay, I'll show you the daytime one. We were initially very concerned about the scaffolding, but of course, once we had a look at it, we thought it's perfect to attach our screen to.
The sun on the House of Commons.
So they really did us a favour with the scaffolding.
The forecast result now. We still haven't got all the seats in, of course. The Conservatives 325.
So there we go. That's our live data into track shot. We like that as a technique. I think we'll use that again.
So we got permission to film in Downing Street, but the original plan was to do something similar where we were going to fly a drone down it and then augment it with the graphics on the floor. But when we spoke to the security people on Downing Street, they turned around and said, no fucking way. So what we ended up doing was they were all right with shooting with conventional cameras, so we got a drone, we got a jib in there, and we filmed it like that, and with the same concept. So the main thing we wanted to get out of it was to sort of light it properly, because it's actually really dark there at night. There's only, those lamps have like LEDs in, and that's about it. So we got a proper not film crew, like a lighting crew in, who lit it all beforehand, so it all looked good. And this is a shot from when we were in there. It's the coldest place on Earth. It's a wind tunnel, and there's a fox. He's about to come and wee on that light on the right. So we had a very grumpy lighting engineer after that.
It's worth saying Paul Hanley was our DOP for this,
yeah,
and did a smashing job lighting it.
So the idea was that we were going to get this shot while we were there, and then we were going to put Jeremy into it we were going to sort of track the backplate, and then rather than putting the graphic in, we were going to put Jeremy in so he could do a live intro into his piece. So while we were there, we shot a load of reference images at the same time and then projected that onto low-res 3D geometry so it kind of matched. So the idea being that we'd do this intro and then you'd go into it, you'd be in a 3D set and it would be seamless. So this is some of the 3D modelling of the piece, and then this is the end. This is the end result in the studio. And as you've seen already, we've kind of got a kind of virtual patch that goes into the studio for where the green screen area is.
Jeremy Vine has taken up residence in his virtual world to explain it all.
Welcome to Downing.
There it is, backplate.
Downing Street. Tonight, we'll see how near
VR
of this election can get to the very door of number 10. Now, these are the seats won last time. The Conservatives came first, but they didn't have enough to reach this line and govern alone. Tonight, we'll see how close the parties get.
So it was we felt it was a bit underwhelming when we actually saw it all put together. And to some extent, it's one of those things that when it works, it works quite well. We couldn't have got in to light Downing Street if we said we just wanted the photographic textures. We had to have the crane, the crew, the director of photography, all of that to get the building lit in such a way we could get a really nice looking VR model. As it was, we probably, having got it lit, could have done it with the just with the cranes in VR, but it was really nice for us using that same technology as the drone backplate to put Jeremy into the backplate.
And we shot some nice GVs as well when we were in there that they could use as well. They used part of it in the titles, so. So as I was saying before, this is all about all the different VR sets that we did. I mentioned a few of them before. That's all the different VR sets that we did. And as I said, it's all in one scene that we could kind of switch between different stuff quickly. They actually all transitioned as well, so you could do it in Vision, but I think they didn't do loads of that because they were quite long hits and it kind of added to the length. But here we are in the House of Commons, which was one of our sequences with Jeremy telling the story of the night.
David, thank you, and welcome to our rather noisy virtual House of Commons, where we can actually take those numbers from the forecast and physically put the MPs on the benches for you. So let's have a look here. And I stress, exit poll only. This is a forecast, but here you see the Conservatives up 9, an improvement on 2010 with 316 seats. And you can see David Cameron there just looking rather thoughtful about what happens next. Now, the obvious thought for the Conservatives is to send for the Liberal Democrats. But of course, the Liberal Democrats have taken some serious damage. Let's have a look. We'll bring on Labour, 239 MPs for them. And there's Ed Miliband watching the Conservative side to see the Lib Dems come on. So here they come. They are down 47. But here's the remarkable thing. This is where Nick was talking about exquisite torture. Look at this, because they're actually on the line. The line is just down here. 326 is what they need to have an overall majority. And the coalition, Conservatives plus Lib Dems, 316 plus 10 under the exit poll, gets to exactly 326 seats in the House of Commons. Now, of course, it only takes a tiny variation in our forecast.
So this is another one of our graphics. This is a swingometer that Jonathan Barrett designed, which I showed you before, which was in Big Ben, which is quite a fun concept. And another, I don't know if they do it in this sequence, but one of the good things in it is it kind of the whole thing spins around and brings on new swingometers, which is obviously not what happens in the real Big Ben, unless I've missed something.
Yes, I have. Well, I just thought, now where are we? 5-3. Isn't it time to see the BBC's swingometer in 2015 on what is probably one of the most extraordinary election nights any of us can remember? So come inside the Elizabeth Tower at Westminster, where we've actually got the 4 clock faces of Big Ben that we are using here as 4 swingometers to enable us just to have a look at different facets of this extraordinary election. So, to explain, here is our Conservative Labour swingometer. If just 5 voters per 100 shift from Labour to the Conservatives since 2010, that's a 5% swing against Labour. That's how it works. This is the England and Wales Conservative Labour swingometer. If the arrow moves against Labour, those red seats get coloured blue. If it moves against the Conservatives, those blue seats get coloured red. Pretty simple. Let's see then the swing so far in England and Wales. Now, you think it hasn't worked, don't you? But it has. I've moved it and it's barely gone to 0.5%, let alone 1%. So essentially, we're almost as we were. Few blue seats have been coloured red if this swing were to be replicated across the country, but there's not much change between the Conservatives and Labour in England and Wales. We've taken the actual results we've got so far, we've fed them into the swingometer, and we then play that swing out across all the seats to see the result were that swing to be spread in a uniform, even way. Of course, it isn't like that. There'll always be outliers, but this is still very useful. Now, move with me if you can. These, by the way, are the results that we've got in so far, so Nuneaton was there. But as you can see, it's just speckled. We haven't got much in yet, but still enough to look at average swing. Let's have a look then at Scotland. Now, before tonight, we were aware the SNP was surging in the polls, so we decided we should recalibrate our swingometer. Tony Blair's result in 1997, his landslide, was a 10.2% swing. We thought we're never going to need more than 30, are we, on the SNP Labour swingometer? Well, let's have a look at what the SNP are doing and the damage they're doing to Labour. Look at that. It is right up. It's almost breaking our swingometer. And this is with its recalibration. 27% almost on the swingometer. So what's happened is that the SNP, as this swing happens against Labour, all of those seats which were red turn yellow. I stress, the swing here is from the actual results we've got. These seats are not cooled yet, but if the swing were spread evenly, that would be the result. Very, very dramatic indeed. You're wondering what the 40 there is. Those are the seats Labour would lose. Of course, there are Lib Dem seats in Scotland which are going to the SNP as well. That's where you get the final total from. So that is very dramatic. That may be one of our images of the night. We almost broke the swingometer.
And that was one of the images of the night. Okay, and this is another one. Oh.
Well, it's looking absolutely awful for the Liberal Democrats if they have lost 47 MPs. We've got a house of cards to show you here, which is the Lib Dems coming off the back of the 2010 election with those 57 MPs, the glory days, what was it, I Believe in Nick and all that. Let's build our house of cards for you here, starting with some of the more long-serving Lib Dem MPs, people like Simon Hughes in Bermondsey, there's Alan Reid there in Argyll and Hughes as well. Just building them up for you here. Put a few more up. You can see who we got. Oh, yeah, Sutton and Sheen. Paul Burstow, locally popular. How's he going to fare tonight? Round the back, another Lib Dem seat, Mid-Dorset and North Pool. There's the candidate there. So just gradually building up these cards here for you. See what 57 players look like. Solihull, Laurelie Burt, and another one there. Greg Mulholland, Leeds North West, right at the top. Last two here. Go on. Up they come. Steve Webb, Pensions Minister in Thornbury. and the candidate in red car. So that is what it looked like for the Liberal Democrats coming out of the last general election in 2010, and that was a really, really handsome result for them, as we know. Tonight, the bad news just comes in and just doesn't stop coming on this exit poll that we've got. Still waiting for results, but we are forecasting that Simon Hughes will probably lose his seat in Birmingham.
Speed here, just so you get the general idea that the Lib Dem House of Cards.
Of the whole thing.
So that's what's left.
Just completely collapsing. So, if they are down to 10, if these are the remaining MPs, they've got half the number that they had.
Okay, it's quite enough of this. Right, we started with projections. And there was a reason for that. Because we did some projections. We started with Scotland as well. And as you'll see, that was relevant. So, this was the hex map that was built. Is Michael Knight in the house? Is he not? Okay, this was originally his work that we took on and made bigger. And here it is. This is a little time lapse of it building up through the night. That's a real, obviously that's a real thing. No Vizrt there. And we also wanted to project on the side of the building, so we did some little tests. Initially, we were going to test using the presenters as a sort of puff piece for the election, but in the end, we got so close to transmission date, we thought we'd just go ahead and do it. Now, there's a lot of issues with projecting onto a building. We vinyled all these windows in the end, and everything was very high contrast and zoomed in and kept moving, so you were never stuck on an architectural feature. And what I'll do here is I'll show you the shot that didn't actually get used in the program, but this is what the people in central London saw. So, as the exit poll was announced. So there we are. We did that, and it was a useful tool to come back to, and also provided some additional redundancy should we need to do results. We're projecting on the main prow of NBH and also on the inside wall, and we had a state of the parties. We could do all of the parties. I haven't included them all here because, quite frankly, we're pressed for time. So that was that. Now, so Back to the Future projections are back. And we came full circle in 8 months because Scotland was very much the story, as well as the collapse of the Lib Dem vote and the fact that the pollsters got it so wrong in the run-up to the election. Or was it the electorate was a little bit canny?
Scotland has chosen to oppose this Conservative government, but not place that trust in the Labour Party.
A tidal wave of support for the SNP made Scotland almost a one-party state.
Here in Scotland, just one Lib Dem seat, one Labour seat, one Conservative seat. The rest has gone yellow.
That means he is heading back to Westminster with 55 others whose dream is that one day soon, Scotland should have no seats in the Commons at all.
The Scottish lion has roared this morning across the country.
So there we are. After 8 months ago, a convincing no vote, here we are again. And the moral of the story is, everything changes and everything stays the same. Okay, there's Mark and I are here for the next couple of days. Martin's here, Chris is here. Ask us any questions. We haven't got any secrets here. We're among friends. We'll share our experience with you. We had a fantastic time. The technology behaved brilliantly, and we did push it very, very hard. So thank you all for that.